I love the fact that like Jiu-Jitsu forces me to go and deal with failure repeatedly, because even though I can go and give a speech about no excuses, follow your dreams, like we all have to go and have that reminder of how to deal with failure over and over and over again. And if we're gonna go and do anything successfully, like we have to be willing to go and fail repeatedly. And that's a beautiful thing. It's like less than 1% of all people actually go and wear that black belt, because it just shows that human beings, we aren't equipped to go and deal with failure. And eventually, somewhere along the way, we break. And if there's one thing that I want to go and find in this life, it's to figure that out. Like, again, that process of self-discovery, like who am I? What am I capable of enduring? And for some reason, struggling with another human being, you know, grabbing their, you know, gi and, you know, ripping on it as hard as you can, and them ripping on yours, and just that intense struggle, like it brings us to that place. Because I can't think about anything else. You can't think about all the stresses. You can't think about the bills you've got to go and pay, or the people you got to go and call back, or the emails you got to go and return. If somebody's trying to go and choke you out, like you've got to go and deal with that threat right there. And so it's almost like a moving meditation, because it forces you into being fully present in that moment, and nothing else matters. Especially in Jiu-Jitsu, man, like your belt is a collection of the spirits and the energies of every person that you've ever rolled with, and they are all like inside there, because you can't go and roll and train by yourself. Like they're all inside of your belt. And I think the learning process that we go through with things, like everything, you know, you start out and it's like you do something and it's like maybe you have that beginner's luck. It's like, oh, this is awesome, you know, and then like after that you just like quickly like fall to nothing, you know, and you're stripped down to nothing. You realize like how bad you suck, right? And then you have that moment of that gut check of like, am I really gonna be able to do this? Am I gonna be able to pull that off? And that's when you start to go and pull out of it. And that, I think, is that path to mastery. You know, as you start to go and pull out of it and you realize what you're capable of. My name is Kyle Maynard, and I was born in Washington, D.C. Grew up most of my life, though, in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was born an amputee. So my mom and dad, they had no idea I was going to be born with any type of disability when I was. But their attitude was all along that they weren't going to go and treat me any different from any other kid. So I grew up as a football player, wrestler, and somewhere along the way, I about 10 years ago, found Jiu-Jitsu and fell in love with it. You know, I feel like wrestling might have been my first love, but Jiu-Jitsu is like my lifelong love. I'll be doing Jiu-Jitsu till the day I die. The small guy versus the big guy, the David versus Goliath, I mean, that's what I've kind of had to experience my whole life. I mean, being a kid that was like, you know, in a wheelchair, like a lot of my life, then like, you know, I had to battle a lot of those demons of you know, those internal things myself, and you know, Jiu-Jitsu itself though is, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you know, you have somebody that weighs 130, 140 pounds. If they know how to go and use their body, they can go and you know, and control somebody that's over twice their size. There's something about Jiu-Jitsu where it's a level of trust and camaraderie that exists in the sport, where you're putting your life in somebody else's hands, and vice versa, them and yours. And it's you know, it pushes you to a place that you can barely go on your own. You know, you have to be able to have a training partner that's going to go and take you to the depths that Jiu-Jitsu can go. You know, when I'm training, all the little things that normally would stress me out, whether it's like a traffic jam or doing my taxes or just something annoying that comes up at work or whatever, some dispute, like when I'm training, like those stresses are so much less. Over the course of human history, you know, we've fought each other. And I think that if you can go to a place where it's like a consensual environment, you can slap hands and you can go and fight and you can get that aggression out, it allows you to go through the world with so much more peace than you would have otherwise. And that's a hard thing to go and understand unless you've gone out there and experienced it for yourself. It's another form of self-discovery. You know, it's every single time that somebody goes and puts me in a choke or I choke somebody, then I mean it's literally like it's life and death. You know, you're reborn. Jiu-Jitsu is one of those sports where at any point in time you can go and train with your heroes. You know, you can go and train with the best in the world. Tell me one other sport that's like that. You know, you can't do that with the NBA and just go and train with Steph Curry or LeBron James. You can't do that with tennis and train with, you know, Roger Federer, you know, or Rafa Nadal. But like Jiu-Jitsu, you can. You know, I've always competed against other able-bodied athletes my whole life, never against people with disabilities. So I've pursued a fight against a, you know, able-bodied MMA fighter. And in 2007 was when I initially like trained for and was about to fight. And it was at that point, you know, I was dreaming about the fight. Like I was so close to it, 3 weeks away. Was told by the Georgia Athletic Commission that it'd be no problem to get my license and compete. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced doing anything that was really super controversial. Online behind anonymous screen names, they're saying Kyle's a limbless freak show trying to get back on Oprah. You know, he's going to be the first televised death in the sport. They said they'd have no problem, you know, kicking my effing skull in, all this stuff. And you know, I read this, and even some people said like something like, "Come take a chainsaw and cut off my arms and legs so I can get on TV like Kyle." And it was very polarizing, you know. But other people that, you know, knew me or my background, other people that I trained with, they were like, "Nah, like he's actually capable." And I know it's hard to conceptualize for people unless we've trained together. When they shut the cage door behind me and they put the pin in, it was one of the craziest moments of my life. And you know, for 3 rounds, didn't die, much to the dismay of the people that were kind of hoping that I did. But you know, it was an amazing experience. So I lose a decision on the judges' scorecard, but I'm sitting in the cage and I had a moment where I was like, you know what, I felt so sorry for everybody who said the things that they said, because they were like 99.9% of them, they were never going to go and have a moment where they could go and step into the cage and go and do it. It's a different experience when people go and train with me. And it's not something that they can go and simulate with other people. You know, they can't go and simulate with their training partners. So when they go to do an arm bar or something like that and the arm's not there, it's definite advantage. And some people have argued that I have an unfair advantage in Jiu-Jitsu, which I totally understand the rationale. But I believe too that unfair advantage, it didn't start there. I may have an unfair advantage, but it has nothing to do with the physical side. It has everything to do with, you know, the mind and the spirit and cultivating that. And that I am a firm believer that anybody can become unfairly advantaged, but you have to be willing to go to those depths. People think, I think with Jiu-Jitsu that you'll have, or just the MMA culture in general, like people think that like, you know, you're gonna have these very big egos, you know, or these tough guys that want to fight all the time, and it couldn't be further from the truth. You have, like, in my experience, like some of the most humble, down-to-earth people like you'll ever meet, because any given day and any practice, it doesn't matter who it is, somebody can go and catch you. And if people aren't catching you, then, and you're only staying to what you do well, then you aren't advancing your jiu-jitsu. You aren't growing anywhere. Like, you have to take risk. You have to be able to go and expose yourself to do things that are bad. The moment that we go and say that we know something for sure, right, that we know something and nothing else can be true, we close ourselves off to everything else. Like Rickson Gracie, you have people, you know, that have been in the sport literally their entirety of their lives, that like are constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly advancing themselves. And that to me is that's the most powerful metaphor for life. If people can go and understand that, you're gonna have a pretty good life. I don't care what career path you're in, I don't care what challenges you're up against. If you have that mindset that you can constantly learn, constantly grow, I think that you can go and do some pretty extraordinary things. You know, I had a lot of people who, you know, would look at me and that they would quote unquote know what my capabilities were, right? They would look at me and they'd kind of put me in one frame in their mind, because all of their past experience said a guy without arms and legs will never be able to go and do X, Y, or Z. And I knew that, like, deep down there would be something more than that. I knew that wasn't true. You know, we all have things. We all have those disabilities to go and overcome, and we can either go down that path of becoming a victim to it and woe is me and miss out on this amazing experience of life and everything that it can go and offer, or we can go and and do something about it. And it doesn't mean that every day is going to be easy. By far, like, the opposite is true. It's the tough path. It's the path of failure. It's the path of dealing with, you know, the aches and the pains and the injuries and the struggle, the emotional struggle, the psychological struggle. Like, that is what gets us to the other side and gets us to a life well lived. To say Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art is like, it just doesn't do it service. It's a lot more than that. It's a spiritual experience. So I feel like in a certain way, like, it wasn't so much that I found Jiu-Jitsu, but Jiu-Jitsu found me.